Good morning, Australia. Good afternoon and good evening to the rest of the world. We are super excited this morning for all those who are joining us. Welcome. We are so excited to jump into this amazing topic of homeschooling and Montessori. Now, I know a lot of our members are from all around the world, so we'd love to hear. Just type a comment. Let us know where you're from. And we'll definitely be trying to make it relevant to where you are all over the world. Now, I'm so excited because if you don't know our special guest today, her name is Aubrey Hargis, and to me, she's the queen of Montessori homeschooling. And I'm just going to read out a little bio while we wait for everybody else to come on. All right. So Aubrey is a parent coach and an educational consultant, best known for her empathetic approach and appreciation for the magic of childhood. As a long life Montessori advocate and AMS certified guide, her passion has always been to bring Montessori into the mainstream. Isn't that a dream? As the founder of Child of the Redwoods, she creates online courses and coaches parents in compassionate discipline techniques and Montessori education. Aubrey lives with her husband and two homeschooled children under a blanket of San Francisco fog, where the coastal cliffs and nearby redwood trails are always beckoning for another adventure. Now, I know we're having a little bit of issues going live into our Facebook group, so we might just see if we can fix that up there on this side. Aubrey, I am going to invite you to join me on the screen. Good morning.
Hey. Hi.
How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me here.
That's okay. It's our absolute pleasure. Before we get started, anybody who does have any questions for Aubrey, please feel free to comment at any time during our conversation. There are some conversations that I will be leading, so with some questions that we have, but we really are looking forward to having your feedback as well. So Aubrey, we are really excited to dive into this topic with our audience today. We would love to know, how did you get started on your homeschool journey, or why is it that you actually decided to homeschool?
Yeah. So my personal journey started inside the school system. So I had a Montessori education myself through about the end of third grade. I transitioned into public schools then. So I got to experience Montessori right from the beginning. And the environments that I were in were very family oriented schools. So they were Montessori schools, but they were like Montessori schools in like somebody's house, a little classroom in their house. And one was a little Montessori school that was a house that they had made into a school. My friends all went to the same school, and it was very small. And so I think probably my homeschooling journey, if I really am honest, it started long, long ago when I was in a very intimate schooling education myself for those early and I think formative years of my life. And from there, I knew that I wanted to become a teacher. I really understood the difference between a Montessori education approach and a more traditional approach. And I was feeling very hot and excited about bringing Montessori education to a more traditional framework. And so I entered the public school system as a teacher. I started off in fourth grade. I taught second and third, and then I kind of wound my way down into teaching kindergarten, mostly because that was where I could find the most freedom, to teach the way I could implement the most Montessori at those younger ages. There was less testing. There was just less pressure at those ages. And I just really kind of found my niche right there in kindergarten. And at the same time, I had lots and lots of fun creating Montessori materials out of scrap materials for my classroom. Most public school teachers, many people don't know this, but most public school teachers aren't given funding, like direct funds to provide materials for the class. Most teachers actually have to go out and purchase those themselves. And so I found myself hunting for things that I could use to create Montessori materials with at dollar stores, at thrift stores, at garage sales. And all along the way, my mother, who happened to be a Montessori teacher, was kind of mentoring and coaching me at the same time. So that's kind of a little bit about my professional background. But by the time I was ready to have babies of my own, I could see the path that the kind of school systems where I was teaching in was taking children. It was taking them into, I don't know, a very, very structured, kind of more high pressured approach to education that I really didn't want for my own children. So, homeschooling, I think, felt like a natural fit for me when we finally got to the age where my oldest would be entering a preschool environment. I had just had a baby, and we just really, part of it was financial, but the other part
Yeah.
was like, I just really wanted us to stay at home together as a family. And I didn't want to send him to school. I had this deep gut instinct inside me that said, like, it's going to be okay if he stays home with me. I can do this myself. And I know that it sounds like, I'm a teacher telling you this, that I was building myself with confidence that I could do it. But actually, I think teachers have a harder time letting go of the expectations that they've set
Yeah.
for the classroom.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So part of it was dissatisfaction with the educational environment that I had witnessed as a teacher, just the constraining nature of it. Felt like I was kind of being squished into a box, and so were the children. And part of it was financial. We were in a position where I really wanted to stay at home with my baby. I didn't want to go back and work full time. We were fortunate enough so that we could live off of a single income. My husband's at the time, we moved across the country to make it more affordable for us to be
Wow.
able to do that. He was able to get a better job so that we could more easily have me at home full time and not drawing in an income. So there was that bit of privilege, but also a bit of not privilege in that, like, we really couldn't afford private school during that time of life without me going back to work. And so it was kind of just a lifestyle decision at that point. Like, once I had decided that, yeah, I probably can make this work, I started to really lean into the lifestyle that homeschooling provided, and I just started to become more and more passionate about this option. I call it option 3. Option 1, you can send your child to a public school, right? Option
Yeah.
2, you can send them to a private school if you can afford it. Option 3, you can just opt out of school. And it was kind of a big realization for me personally to realize that that was a choice that our family could make. And I've never regretted the choice that we've made.
That's amazing. And I think that so many people are going through that same process, thinking about, I know a lot of the parents at my school. So if for people who don't know, I've got a Montessori preschool, and we do the full program from birth all the way up to 6 years. And then they all ask me, well, Sylvia, are you going to open a Montessori primary school? And I thought, because a lot of them here are inaccessible, they
Yeah.
might be far away, they might not be financially viable. And so people are really looking for that third option, because they don't feel like they fit in any particular mold, or and they do have that same journey that you went on. So thanks so much for sharing your background with us, because I think
Mhm.
it's very relatable to everybody, especially for those who are joining us today and listening in. With the ages, like, I know we had a couple of comments. So we did have a question from Courtney Logan, and she said, I have a 2-year-old. What's your advice for someone that's beginning, or is there such a thing as homeschooling for a 2-year-old? Is that too young? What are your thoughts around that specific question?
I think that it's very important that especially within a Montessori context, we recognize that education begins as soon as your child is born. Really before that, right? The prepared
Absolutely.
environment inside the womb is already educating your little child even before they open their eyes into the world. But once they are outside of our bodies and we have them in our arms, and they are taking in the sights and the smells and the feels of the world around them, and they're listening, that education is already happening. So whether you've been thinking about it as an education or not, but it's there, it's happening.
Absolutely.
Um, but we don't generally think of ourselves as homeschoolers when we have a newborn. That feels like too much pressure, right? The pressure of schooling a newborn. We might even laugh or scoff at it. Newborns, babies don't need school, right? And I
Yeah.
can get on that bandwagon just as much as anybody else can. But when we look at the Montessori method, when we think about what it's really doing, what we are really doing as educators of children, is we are following their development. And that's at whatever age they're at. So if you have a newborn, yes, you are your child's educator. You are homeschooling that little newborn. If you have a toddler, if you have a 2-year-old, your child's already been in the world for 2 years with you as their primary teacher. And so
Right.
really just continuing the journey. It doesn't mean that you have to all of a sudden become very structured and organize your child's day and give specific lessons. It doesn't mean that. Homeschooling is just you being a little more intentional about saying, I see that this is my role. And I think that most parents don't really get there until they have the option to school or not school. So for me, it happened around when my child was around 2 or 3. When my firstborn was 2, I was teaching in a toddler classroom and loving it. And then we moved, and I moved away from that school, so that wasn't really an option anymore. And my second option was stay home, be with me. I want to be with the baby, and we don't have a school here for me to teach in anyway because we'll have moved. But that's there's going to be a point at which you'll have to make the decision, and maybe it's toddler school time for you. Like, do I want to enroll my child in a toddler school or not? Or maybe it's preschool for you. Do I want to enroll my 3-year-old in a school or not? Or maybe it's not even until your child would go to a free public school, kindergarten or first grade, and that's when you make the decision. I'm going to be a homeschooler. But if you feel yourself called to this path, there's going to be a point at which in your head you start to switch over from I'm
Yeah.
a stay-at-home mom or parent to I'm a teacher. I'm teaching my child. And I think that journey is not always easy for us as parents. It comes with a lot of vulnerability, especially for those of us who maybe have left another career behind in order to stay at home for a little while with our little ones
Yeah.
before transitioning back into a certain career. I think for those kind of parents, there can be a lot of imposter syndrome. And just in general in our culture, I think that it's almost like, as we know this as teachers, and those of us who are mothers for certain feel it, that there is this general sense that if we're not doing something purposeful that involves making money, then we are not worth. We don't have value. And so, as Montessori educators, we are choosing a different option. We're choosing to value ourselves. We're choosing to see our work at home, whether it's unloading the dishwasher in front of our child or helping our child wash their hands, as valuable and worthy and part of their education. So, really, it's a mind shift. It's about the intention. It's about
Yeah.
you taking control of your child's education. Whatever point you're ready to take on that new role, put on the cape, dress up in that role, you suddenly decide, I'm not just here witnessing my child growing up. I am a participant in it. I'm not just keeping them busy and out of my hair and other people's hairs. I am bringing in some expectations about what our relationship might look like
Mm.
as my child enters this new phase of awareness and interest in their world. And as you know, Sylvia, that transition often happens around age 2.5. That's when children really start to transition into from being just totally absorbent, in their whole world, to being conscious in their world. And so I think that that's also a time for a lot of parents where they start feeling that more sense of like, I have different expectations of what this next few years is going to look like.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really wanted to highlight a few of the points that you made, that Montessori or any type of early childhood education, it really does start from birth. And a lot of the time people are like they're not intentionally unaware, but they're unaware that in those small moments of engagement, in that, in that nappy change, in the daily care, in the feeding, there's all this learning that's taking place. So without even realizing, we are
Yeah.
children's first and foremost teacher. And I think that that's so underestimated, and people don't consciously make that bring that into their awareness. So I love that you brought that up, because it's such a great point. The other thing I was going to talk about was the hat that you put on, or the qualities that you feel that that will draw you towards that role, or being that. How would you are there certain characteristics or things that you think are important to have, or is there something that you should think about, am I the right person to do this journey, or am I more suited to something else? So I wanted you to expand a little bit on that, because I think that that's such an important part of this this kind of journey.
I think that it's important. It's normal and natural to be nervous at the beginning of any new journey that you take, anything that you're going to do that's new.
Yeah.
And fortunately, or unfortunately, however you look at it, our children provide us that opportunity all the time. They're constantly growing and changing. And so if we can look at ourselves as putting on the hat of homeschooler through that lens of, I'm going to try something new, and what's it going to take to try this new thing, to see myself in this new way? It's going to take being vulnerable. It's going to take feeling insecure. It's going to take messing up, making a lot of mistakes. It's going to take things not working with my child refusing to be with me or work with me, or just failing lessons. That's what it's going to take for you to join on this journey, and that's all part of the learning journey. But really, I think that homeschooling can work for all kinds of personalities. I certainly look at my own local homeschooling community, and like those, I have a lot, there's a lot of me that's in common with a lot of these other parents that I know. We're definitely not the same. We're definitely not the same people. Right. Like we come from different backgrounds. We
Of
have
course.
different values sometimes we have different religious beliefs,
Yeah.
and just different ways of engaging with the world. But I think that the beauty of Montessori is that we know that we treat the child in the way that they are unique and wonderful and individual.
Yeah.
And we can also treat ourselves that way. We can say, you know what, this is a new role, and I'm going to adapt it to me and my needs and my personality. So I wouldn't say that you need to be a particularly patient or calm, or
That's good.
even a good teacher. Like, you don't have to have any experience teaching at all in order to take on this homeschooling role. But what you do have, and what I think all the homeschoolers that I've ever really met who have been successful have, is a commitment. So
Yeah.
if you are fully committed, that would be the biggest factor in making you a success at homeschooling, versus not a success. So I hear a lot of people say, we're going to try out homeschooling and see if it works, and that's like a little toe step in, but you're not fully committed yet. And until you get to that full, like, I'm going to make this work for our family, and I want to do this, and I'm really in it, I think that you really can't expect total success from that
Yeah.
perspective.
And I think that the success is really a measure of what people perceive it to be. So the thing is that if someone walks in, and like you said, it's really about that intention or that commitment that people make, and say, you know what, whether I fail, whether I, do it, whether I mess up, whether I do everything wrong, it's okay. Like, having that. And this is the same thing when people are implementing Montessori at home, in whatever capacity, whether that is homeschooling or whether that is just at Montessori at home within the lifestyle, is that they put so much pressure and expectation on themselves to be a particular way, and
Yeah.
compare with other people and other parents that are doing it, and what are they doing in their home, and what am I doing in my home, and I don't have this and I don't have that. And it really does put that pressure on, as a parent to, and we really don't need that. And I think this is the point of what you were saying, is that you really, all you need is to be like, I'm here, I'm ready to do this, and it's okay if everything goes wrong, because it's part of the
Yes.
learning, it's all part of the learning journey. And we grow as much as our children are growing through the journey. We grow as parents, as our children's teachers, as a person, with all of our characteristics. And I'm sure you've learned a lot about yourself through homeschooling, Aubrey.
Absolutely. So much. Yeah. I
And
think
yeah,
families that are drawn to homeschooling, they tend to be people just in general who are open to different possibilities, So if you're very closed-minded, like this is the way I grew up and this is the way it has to go,
yeah.
maybe homeschooling won't work for you because it's a very outside of the box. You're not staying in your box, you're leaving the comforting fold.
Mhm.
But I do think that in general, the homeschooling families that I know are people who are able to say, I wonder what this different kind of life could look like for us, and to be kind of open and curious about that possibility. And that also leads you to success.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's talk about budgeting, materials and resources. I know you briefly skimmed on it in the beginning of your intro, but I know that this is such a huge topic or subject when it comes to, homeschooling or even just implementing Montessori at home. And I know in our group, especially Montessori at Home 0 to 3 years, and even through Guide and Grow, we always try and break down that stereotype that, you have to have these materials and you have to have these Montessori resources, because so much of it you can DIY, you can thrift, you can buy from, you can go to Goodwill stores. So I want to specifically ask you, can you use things at home, or do you need to invest in materials? We'll start with that question, and then I have a few others in terms of materials as well, because I know there might be a point where you do need to, maybe invest in some that your child is kind of
Mhm.
showing interest in. So let's talk about budgeting.
Yeah. Okay. So the first question, parents often come and just ask me, um, but how much exactly do I need in order to do Montessori homeschooling? Right? Give me a number. Just give me a
Yeah,
number. And it's so hard to answer because I know that people really want the number. Like it's
yeah,
comforting to have a number. If I say like $2,000, like, okay, now I can budget for that or not. I get it. But the truth is, it's so much easier if you come at from the perspective of what can I afford? Can I afford to spend $500? Can I afford to spend $10,000? I mean, families come from a vast spectrum of financial ability, but Montessori is not exclusive to anybody.
thank
So
you.
I would say that, I will give you a ballpark in a typical Montessori classroom, a school that has a 3 to 6 classroom. If you were to buy every single material that you see on the shelves and it's a beautifully designed classroom, you're talking about 10 to 30,000. Okay, that's what you would need to start a Montessori school and like have everything premium and beautiful on the shelves like you see. And that is what you're paying for. A part of it when you pay tuition to a
Of
private
course.
school, you're paying for someone else to buy those materials and the expertise of the guide. But at home, most of us can't afford that. Like most of us just don't have that kind of budget. Now, if you're saying, many parents will say, I'm going to save so much money from not putting my child in private school that I can afford several $1,000s worth. And that's great. You have a few thousand, you can buy a ton of wonderful materials and you can have a beautiful Montessori shelf that looks very much like a classroom. And parents do choose to do that. You see them all over Instagram. And I think, mwah, I think it's beautiful, but it's not it's not necessary in order to give your child a Montessori education. When I was homeschooling my littles, I was not working. So, we were on one income. We did a lot of traveling because we moved so far away from family. We would spend a lot of money on plane tickets back to see our family, but it really, like, there wasn't a whole lot of money left over to just purchase
Mhm.
materials. And so I felt fortunate in the fact that I had came from this history of being scrappy in the classroom. It gave me a lot more comfort to know that really, yeah, most Montessori materials can be made out of paper, out of art supplies. And so
Yeah.
I would giggle and set myself a budget of, like a couple $100s a year. And, I would spend it all at the art supply store and craft it. And then I would get real thrifty. I would go to thrift stores and I would kind of spend money over time. a few 50-cent pitchers here, a few little dollar trays here. And it does add up, but it's much more manageable if you
Yeah,
are working within a
absolutely.
really strict budget. So all of that is to say, you can do Montessori at home for $0 if $0 is what you have. Like, obviously, you have to feed and take care of your child.
Oh,
And children do cost money, in that respect. But aside from that, you just don't need to feel pressured to buy the classic Montessori materials. Because when we look at the actual method, we are looking more about the skills that children are trying to learn. And then
yeah,
we can just challenge our creativity. We can say, okay, so children at this age group are really interested in learning how to discern different sounds. Okay, so you don't have to go and buy a beautiful set of sound cylinders that are pre-made. You can go into your cabinet and get things out at home and make a temporary work. It's not going to be super pretty, but children don't really care that much. They're really in it for the experience,
of
right? I
course.
think as
Yeah, of
as
course.
adults, we tend to care. And I love that part of Montessori. The cute trays are so cute. It makes my heart pound when I see like a little um the colorful
Yeah,
little like a little red tray with a red tipped spoon and
everything
a little white
matching.
pitcher, and oh my gosh, oh, love it, love it. Like, the interior decorator in me that exists somewhere is just like squeeze, right? But for the child, it's really about the purpose.
Yeah,
So if you're using the spoon that you have at home and there's cereal for spooning, you don't necessarily need to go create that work on a shelf for them if they're already getting that need met.
yeah,
So it just really depends. Now, if parents, you asked about like where parents might look if they were going to purchase those materials. So I think that it's important to remember that a lot of the Montessori companies out there sell materials that are designed to be used for many students and many lessons throughout the whole year, and then year after year after year after year. So they are designed with quality in mind. And you're going to be paying for quality if you choose one of those materials. But there are lots of companies out there now that didn't exist when I was homeschooling my own. And my oldest is 14 years old right now. The Montessori materials online have just exploded with more affordable options. So
yeah,
I really feel like if a parent were going to be choosy, they could say, I can do everything practical life without purchasing anything, using just everything that we have at home. Sensorial, I might invest in just a few of these materials, for
yeah.
a couple $100 and, be perfectly satisfied with that. But again, materials are optional. It's more about the method and the philosophy.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. I think the messaging that we really are trying to shift people's thinking is really about the lifestyle, the philosophy,
Yeah.
the principles that underlie the practice. That's where the beauty of Montessori is. And I think that sometimes we do get hung up on the materials and the shelves and what it looks like. And we have to have those activities set up and they have to be this way. And really, it doesn't have to be any of that. It's just those moments that we capture and that we're able to create that experience through the daily life. We're going to take some questions, Aubrey, from our audience.
Yeah.
So I'm going to pop some up on the screen.
Mhm.
This one comes from Erica. She's asking, do you create a daily schedule for homeschooling? If so, can you share what your schedule looks like? And I know there's also another question from Erica. Is there a Montessori homeschooling curriculum? So Aubrey's going to share her amazing curriculum and where you can find those extra resources with us.
Okay, so let's do schedule. So schedule first. Um, So, all right. So when we talk about schedule, we often, as homeschoolers, we start with reimagining what was it like in school? What does a school schedule look like? How would I implement that at home? And we often get tripped up because what we want to do is we want to start off with a piece of paper. And this is something that I teach in my courses. I'm just going to teach it to you right now. We want to start off with a piece of paper. We want to make this little detailed time schedule. 8 o'clock, 8:30, and so we want to fill in all these little spots with either activities or transitions or, just snack and lunch and outside playtime and the things that we do. We want to like make the schedule. And then we want to go to our child and then make them adhere to the schedule. And that makes us feel like we're doing our job, right? We're going through the schedule. But it's often a path where parents get frustrated because children don't follow a schedule, especially the little ones. They do, however, have a rhythm. And if we can spend some time trying to figure out what their rhythm is, instead of just creating a schedule, at school, you might, in a traditional preschool, not a Montessori one, but like traditional school, you might think, okay, I've got 20 to 30 kids in this class. I'm going to create a schedule and then I'll shuffle them all through it because that's just the way to manage the day. But at home, you don't have to do that. You can look at your child and really spend some time observing and analyzing and think, when does this child seem to really want to snuggle and read with me? When does this child really seem to get off on playing outside? When are they normally seeming to really want to do that? And so that's where we start in Montessori with creating a schedule. So a schedule is just really the routine that we put in place after we've observed and cultivated a rhythm with our children. And as for the perfect schedule, it just doesn't exist. It's going to look different for every single family. Some families are going to wake up super late and they're going to start with stories in the morning. And then they're going to spend all morning in their jammies. And then they're not going to get outside until like 3:00 p.m. And some families are going to wake up in the morning and everybody's going to be energized. They've got morning birds. They're going to have a quick breakfast and they're going to get out the door and have a big field trip first thing. Okay, so I can't tell you which one is going to work for your family, but I can tell you that probably what's working right now or what feels like it's working right now is going to shift. And then you'll be in a different schedule. So I've tried out all kinds of schedules with my kids. You kind of get this gut feeling when things aren't working right. And then you try something new and then try that out and see if it works better to have playtime in the morning and instead of more playtime in the afternoon, or if it feels better to be, more like internal and relaxed in the morning. Those kind of things ebb and flow throughout the years as your children grow. I can tell you children they get really used to routines, especially those toddlers, the toddler age, they thrive on routine. But we always come at it starting with the child and looking at the child's needs and what they're telling us through their body language and their emotions. And that is what really kind of dictates the schedule. And then if you're consistent with the schedule, if you try it out for just 1 week, it might not work. You got to try out for like 6 weeks. And then you'll be able to see if it's a good schedule for you or not, or where you can tweak. I hope that helps.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the really important part when you're talking about the younger children as well is that they really lead the routine and the schedule. And really it's not a big shift if you think about what you're already doing now as a parent and how your days are looking and running like to make that shift over. And I think that's such an important thing to know when you are doing Montessori or practicing Montessori at home or even Montessori homeschooling is that it really is child-led. And if you just observe and try and see those signals through the communication. Yeah. And I think there was someone over here. I'm just going to pop up this question because it's very much related. And this is going to be great. Jackie was asking, when inside, what about when they just don't seem interested for more than a minute? And you just always end up having to, having all their toys out, and it only buys you 30 minutes. So, and this is the thing, right, Aubrey? We were talking about how something's not working, or if you feel that it's not right for the moment, then maybe that's not the right thing for that time. You might want to comment on that.
Yeah. There was a particular point in time. First of all, I think on the subject of not seeming interested for more than a minute, that's very, very common if you have a little one at home. If you were talking about a child who's in the elementary years, then like we can troubleshoot that. But if you've got a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old, I would really, really see if you could reduce your expectations of what they are able to focus on, for how long. But on the subject of time periods that are good to do lessons and time periods that are bad to do lessons, I found that we had a lot of success early in the morning. Just for my
Mm.
children, when they were little, they were fresher, they were, more awake. And I found that the time when I needed to remove expectations of myself doing other things or being busy, or to expect them to be able to last, was like this particular afternoon time period. Like after we'd gone out, maybe after nap, but not yet before dinner, there was this little block of time when things were just going so badly when I had a toddler and a preschooler at home, consistently, that I just made a rule for myself. And it was, Aubrey, you may not do anything during this time period, because like
Aubrey,
this is not a time when your children
we
can focus
so
and
Aubrey, we call that
yeah.
happy hour here in Australia.
Yes. Happy hour.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, yes, a time period when you have to be happy, not doing the things that you think you need to do during that time. And instead, maybe set a timer and say, I'm just going to have to be present during this time. And I don't want to be present. I'm also tired. And so, that I think there was this particular point where I started to shift in being at home full time. And now I work at home full time. So I can still do this. I decided to make dinner in the mornings instead, and to just reheat things when we're ready to have dinner later. I realized that I was really trying to follow this ideal. I'm going to prepare a lovely dinner, and then my husband will come home. We'll all have like this perfect little family dinner. We'll light a candle. I had the whole thing, and I just had to let that go. I had to say, okay, like this is not going to happen. I can't be busy during this time period. I have to be present. I can have the fancy dinner if I want to, but it's not going to be fresh. It's going to be reheated. And so I switched my time schedule so that I was more cooking in the morning, and I was able to give my children my full attention in that happy hour.
Yeah, and I think it is about that. It's about trying to shift and be flexible, being flexible with
Yeah.
yourself and your own schedule and the things that you have to do. Sometimes we do get stuck in that, oh, I've got this that I need to get through, and but I just need to do it. And sometimes that mentality might not be the flexibility that's needed for the situation. And children aren't as flexible as we are. It
That's
does
right.
take that adjusting. So yeah, that's a great point. I love it. I love the reheating dinner. Everyone can, if someone doesn't like it, they can skip dinner then.
That's right.
Okay, so with the somebody mentioned here, and I did want to get onto this topic a little bit. Firstly, Unetta was saying thank you for hitting the
Yeah.
budget topic. What a relief. It is a big relief because
Mhm.
so much of the time there is this expectation, and Montessori has this, which I hate. It's got that little tag attached to it. It has to be expensive, and I think it was a relief for so many people that you were saying that you just work within the budget that you have and what
Yeah.
works for your family. So thanks for going through that. This topic is a big one. Maria and
Yeah.
Montessori was saying, how do you supply that mixed age benefit in a homeschool and without siblings? So that's one topic on the mixed age. And also, if you did have mixed ages in your home, so the toddlers and the babies, and how would you manage that? So we'll do this one first, and then we'll head over
Yeah.
to the multiple age question.
Okay, so let's talk about the benefits of a multi-age classroom. This is one of the things about Montessori that I just love about Montessori schools, is that we combine ages into one classroom together, and we have children kind of doing individual work on several different levels. One of the benefits is that when children who are younger are observing their older peers doing more advanced work, it can kind of stimulate interest in those activities. So for a young child who isn't maybe quite ready to maybe do any writing yet, they might see an older child doing writing, and it might inspire them to start using using writing utensils more intentionally on a page, and mimicking writing and strengthening their motor skills, getting themselves ready for it. So that's just one example. It happens in all of the subject areas, just all over the place, this inspiration that's coming from peers that are older. And it's also great because the older peers get to teach lessons to the younger children. And when you teach something to somebody else, you learn so much more. And this is why I say, and this is funny, but it's so true. I say to Montessori parents, if you are doing Montessori at home, you're going to learn so much about the world, like
Oh,
so
yeah.
much. You're going to learn so much, like by just like creating a set of parts cards or,
Yeah,
preparing for this
100%.
lesson. You're going to really solidify your knowledge of what it
Yeah.
is. You're going to learn so much more than maybe even your child does because you're the one doing the teaching. So those are two benefits of being in a mixed age group. Another benefit, of course, is the socialization that happens. Socialization is a loaded word. People tend to think that socialization means your child has to be in a grouping of same age peers in order to develop properly as a human being. And it is not true. Children don't need that. If you look worldwide at how children have been raised through different cultures, different family structures, many children are raised in families that don't have siblings. Children are raised in families that have lots of siblings. Sometimes children spend a lot of time with grandma, and they grow up to be successful, wonderful human beings. Okay, so obviously, as humans, we don't need to be in a classroom of same age peers in order to become successful social beings who know how to talk to each other. So, as homeschoolers, what that means for us, especially if you have a child who is a single child, who doesn't have siblings, it means that what you want to make sure that you do is you incorporate the benefits of mixed age learning into the situation that you already have. So, you are the older person that your child is looking up to. It means that you need to do modeling for them. You need to be in there in your home classroom environment, wherever that is, your bedroom or your kitchen or whatever it is, wherever the place is you are playing and working with your child, you're going to be in there modeling for them because that's what children would be doing in the Montessori classroom. And so your child will be looking at you. How often is mom writing, or how often is grandma writing? And then I want to emulate that as well. So those kind of things can already happen, even if it's just you and your child at home. You are kind of taking on the role of the older student. It's also important that you allow your child to be the teacher, so you should, as they go through their Montessori education with you, especially if they get to about age 4, you'll start to see this really coming into play. You might not see it at age 2 or 3 yet, but by around 4, 4.5, 5, that's the time for it. You're going to see your child start to give you lessons. They're
Oh,
going to
yeah.
say, Mommy, come over here. I have something to show you, they'll say. And you'll say, oh, what is it? And you'll think, this feels familiar, like they're giving me a lesson. And you'll wander over, and then they will indeed be giving you a lesson. And they'll show you exactly how they did something. And maybe they'll even put it on the shelf for you to do. So it'll happen at home. Those two things definitely can happen. I'll tell you that homeschoolers are some of the most social creatures I have ever been aware of in my life. We have a reputation for being unsocial or for our kids being weird and unsocialized, but it's not true. Homeschoolers are constantly seeking other kids for their kids to be around. And you can find it if there's no homeschooling community in your local area, then you can still play with kids who go to school. There's, no one is saying you only have to be friends with other homeschoolers or to meet and play with other homeschoolers. You can go to your local playground and still meet friends and play with them. And that is a priority for a lot of homeschoolers. So, it's at your library. There's just lots of ways to meet people out and about in the world and for your child to have experience with.
And I think that sense of community does come, and homeschooling children are seeking those friendships and that community. And of course, at home, you're always modeling those social skills and giving them those opportunities. So I think that my one of my questions, which you just answered, was how important is a community or a sense of community surrounding you. So I would recommend, we've got lots of homeschooling groups on Facebook here in Australia that you can connect with other homeschoolers. And I'm sure it might be like that in the USA as well and around the world. Or like you said, you can go to the local park and meet other families. It's okay if they go to school and your child doesn't.
That's right.
I think people put themselves in a category, and then they think they have to stay in that little circle and they can't really, mix with other people. But I think that's just our own thinking around that.
Yeah.
So Aubrey, what about if you had like multiple age children? So if I had
Yeah.
a 3-year-old and, they were ready and I really wanted to embark on this preschool home learning journey, and I had another, like a 1-year-old, how does that dynamic work? Or what are some tips that you can give people on how that would work in the home?
Yeah. So first, I would say that anyone who has children that have more than one at home, one of your big benefits is the conflict that is no doubt going to ensue over works, over play. Those are all opportunities for you to teach lessons about peace and conflict resolution right there in your home. They are important moments for lessons. We can talk about that under the category grace and courtesy, generally in Montessori. It's within the practical life category. But yeah, I found that as frustrating as it is having children that are about 3 years apart, those are mine. There were so many benefits just in the way that they interacted. Sometimes they were very much in sync in their homeschooling, and we would have these magical lessons together. I always included the baby if possible. I'd have the baby in my lap, and I would still just go through and give the lesson to the preschooler. And sometimes things would go terribly. The baby would reach over and grab stuff, stuck it in their mouth, and the 3-year-old would cry and or rage. Like those moments happen. And sometimes I would just laugh and laugh. I would just find myself laughing so hard because the lesson was such a disaster with them. But that is all just part of parenting. It's not something to shy away from or to think that it is a wrong experience. Just because children don't have that experience in a typical 3 to 6-year-old classroom in the Montessori school doesn't mean that that's not a valid experience for children to have. So you're going to kind of work with your child on finding ways that work for your family. And there are a lot of different things you might do. You might think specifically about your workspaces. You might have your 3-year-old working at the kitchen counter. Maybe that's a great workspace during this particular time when your child really needs some separation. Maybe you're going to give your child lessons while your baby naps. I did that a lot until my baby stopped napping. He was about 2 years old when he stopped napping, and then that was it.
Early.
Yeah, that was it. There were some rough years in there, but you'll figure out how to make it work. So I think that can be a real sticking point with people. And I just would say to know that it might not be something that you're ever able to just figure out and find the perfect way to handle it. Okay. Even in my community, in my homeschooling community that I teach, the mamas come in there and they almost all struggle with this if they have multiple age children. So, and we're talking about experienced people who have been homeschooling, and they have elementary age students, and they've been in these Montessori courses for years. They're still struggling with sibling issues. And so I think that's very telling. There's no expert answer to solve all of those things. We just keep working with kids, and we keep leaning in, and we keep troubleshooting. And thinking about the ways that we can change the space in subtle ways to help meet those needs.
But I also think that these are opportunities, like you said, for skill building. And when you mentioned that, these situations might not occur in a 3 to 6 preschool, setting in a Montessori, let me tell you, it does.
Well, yeah, between children.
Like this, this week alone, I sent out a message to all of my parents, and I said, it was a skill building day today, and that means that we had incidents in the classroom where people, needed to communicate. I need space, that could have been a physical touch or or something like that. But And these are all opportunities. When your child is taking something off their sister or brother and just snatching it out of their hand, that's the perfect opportunity for grace and courtesy lessons,
Yes.
right? Those are the moments where we acknowledge them. And I'm going to answer this question from Haley. I'm following my almost 3-year-old the best I can, but the emotional breakdowns are so distracting. So instead of looking at it as a distraction, it's almost like, wow, this is a great opportunity for social emotional regulation. This is the moment where I'm going to stop everything that we're doing, get down, acknowledge my child. You're so frustrated. I can see that you're having a hard time. I'm here for you. What can I do for you? And working through that and building their skills so that they can then start to understand, how do I better regulate my emotions? What skills can I have? Can we draw how angry we are? Can we stomp our feet? And that in itself is learning. That is part of, and correct me if I'm wrong, Aubrey, right? That is part of your schedule. So it's really, and this is what I told the parents, these moments are great for all the children involved. How do I communicate with my peers? How do I tell them I don't like something? Or, where are my boundaries? So these are really opportunities. I didn't know if you want to add anything into that, Aubrey.
No, I agree. I agree. And when we were in the toddler classroom, we would have some very terrible biting incidents that made
Oh
all of
yeah.
the parents very concerned.
Yeah.
And in the preschool classroom, also conflicts, they just happen. Conflicts between kids happen. And so, it's why if you have siblings and they are in conflict with each other, it can be a big benefit for you. They are going to learn how to navigate those issues. And if you have a child who is a single child at home, again, and you're a dedicated homeschooler, you're going to be creating social opportunities for your child to be in conflict with other children. Yeah.
Oh, so Aubrey's promoting the conflict. I'm just joking. And if anyone wants to know, like I know Grace was mentioning here, and we did cover this a little bit, how to discourage aggressive behaviors from a 2-year-old. Children who are 2, I just wanted to say this, they're communicating. They might not have the words on how to communicate. The behaviors that we see from them are just their way of telling us that, hey, I'm going through something right now. I need you to hear me. I need you to understand me. So if you were looking for any tips, advice, we have so many videos on Guide and Grow TV on our YouTube channel. And I've gone through the big emotions and the feelings and how to really, help your child through those situations. So if you are looking for that, advice or kind of to understand more about what's happening with my child at this age, we have all the resources available for you guys. Okay, so we have another question from Haley, and I will get into some of the other questions I've skipped by about the curriculum. And I know, Unetta, you also had another question, so I will come back to that one. She says, my almost 3-year-old wants to give me lessons, but they're so wild, sometimes inappropriate. She has so many ideas that I don't understand. It's hard to pretend to be a kid. Yes, it is really hard.
Yes.
I feel like I'm faking my interest sometimes, especially if I have other things to do. How have you found ways to help you get on their level?
Yeah, boundaries. That's an important one. Personal boundaries.
Yeah.
I think that we don't want our children to grow up and to feel like they can't set personal boundaries for themselves. And so I think it's really, really important that we as parents set boundaries on what we are willing to do and when we're willing to do it, and when we're not, when we actually do need to do other things. So some of the things that can help a child with that is for you to say, you can say, first, I'm going to do this, and then I would love to see your lesson. And then excuse yourself when then the lesson is over and say, thank you so much for showing me that lesson. I would love to see another one sometime. Right now, I've got to go and whatever you have to do. And that's kind of setting like a little boundaries, letting your child know, no, I'm not available to you 100% of the time. I value myself and I also have important things to do for myself. And your child, I think, is going to learn from that approach and to start treating themselves that way. No, mom, one day they're probably in another year, Haley, you're going to see your 4-year-old is going to come up to you and say, no, mom, I really just can't engage with that right now. I need to be working on my whatever it is. And you'll start to see them set boundaries for themselves. And that's like a
Love
really
that.
exciting moment. That's when that particular grace and courtesy lesson
Of
took just
course.
by modeling.
Yeah, absolutely. There are always boundaries. And, when you've got, in a classroom situation, when I've got 12 kids, needing my, everyone's, this is when the boundaries come in. You really need
Yes.
my help, but, such and such also, needs me right now, and I'll be over there soon. But
Yeah.
acknowledging them, obviously, and having those boundaries.
Yeah, a
Um,
phrase that I used was, "I'm not available right now."
oh, I love that.
Not available.
Not available.
And then and then you have to tell them when you will be. I'll be
Yes,
available
of
at 11
course.
o'clock, or I will be
Yeah.
available in 10 minutes, and we can set a timer, or,
Yeah. Yeah, timers are a great way if people have younger children, because sometimes that 2 to 3, 4, they still don't have that concept of time. So seeing, after you do this activity, or after you finish this puzzle, then I will be, or once you choose 2 more things, or, using the kitchen timer and things like that is really, really, really helpful. Aubrey, I want to talk about now. Thank you so much for all the time you've taken to answer all these questions. And it's been such an amazing discussion. I wanted to tell people about your homeschooling course. I would love you to tell people about your program and what it looks like, because I know so many people listening have had that question. Where can we find a homeschooling course or a program, or how can we have that guidance? So feel free to tell people about what you do.
Sure. I teach a hybrid live/self-paced course. Right now, we are about to start the 8-week intensive portion of the course. So if you join, you're welcome. You can start as self-paced if that works for you. But a lot of us really are motivated by the excitement that comes with a live component to a course. It can make it feel very much more personal, and can challenge you to take the journey along with a cohort of peers. And so I offer it that way because it just works better for most people. It's a class for parents of ages 2 to 6. I say that the curriculum is for ages 2.5 to 6, but people often like to take it a little bit early to start preparing. And I think that that's fine. As soon as you join, you would be given immediate access to pre-recorded videos and all of the materials, and that's a lifetime access. And then after that, you're just on your community, and you're invited to join us for the live portion, where I will go live and do coaching, basically like this, answer questions. We can just do deep dives on each topic. We cover all of the important areas of Montessori: sensorial, practical life, language, math, cultural. And so a lot of parents find that when they start the course, they are kind of filled with that imposter syndrome that I'm not sure I'm capable of doing it. And by the end of the course, they kind of come away with a feeling of, okay, like this feels very feasible. I've got some great activities that I know are going to work for my child right away, and I know kind of what's coming down the road, because it's designed for multi ages, right? It's an age 2 to 6 course. And I know that that seems kind of funny, but that is the way it is in Montessori, right? We really want to look at the development of children from when they are transitioning out of toddlerhood
Yeah.
through those preschool years and prepping themselves for elementary. And so the course just kind of takes you through their development by looking at it through the lens of the Montessori method for each one of those particular subjects. So it's a really fun program. We're about to start our next session. I teach the live portion of the course twice a year. I always get super excited when it's time for it. There's lots and lots of energy going on right now in our community. This is a course that is accessible for anybody working with any budget. So you don't have to, if you come to me and you say, tell me exactly what materials to buy, I have materials lists. You can pick and choose from among them which ones that you can afford or you would like to afford for your family. But there's no must. Everyone is welcome and everyone is legitimate in Montessori.
I love that so much, Aubrey. And Maria was asking, do you recommend to take your course once, once the baby is 2 years of age? I mean, like you were saying, it is a transitional
Yeah.
time. So if you wanted to feel prepared, and this is what I would advise to Maria, if you wanted to feel prepared for that transitional year and what's to come so that you are ready, Aubrey, I think that would be your answer to that question.
Yep.
Yeah. We also have another question. How can we join? Okay, so for everyone that's asking, how do we join? We've popped some links up. We'll pop the link on the YouTube channel as well so that you guys can access the course. I know that you can read a lot of information about there. I only have two days in a week to spend with him. Aubrey, do you think that that's enough time, or would they see a benefit in joining the course if that's the only period that
Yeah.
they've had through the course?
That's actually a really, really good question. So, in our community, we have parents who are working full time, Monday
Wow.
through Friday on a traditional schedule. Some parents who are working night times. There's just a variety of different situations. You don't have to be a full time homeschooler or even really have claimed the label of homeschooler yet. Because a lot of parents are in that transition. Kind of testing out the hat. Right? Am I a homeschooler? Am I not? And so, especially in this course, in our lower elementary course, most of those people have already made that transition into
Of
homeschooling
course.
fully. But in our primary course, there's a lot of people who are just testing it out, and they really are there to go deeper into Montessori. They know the benefits that a Montessori education can give their child, and they
Yeah.
want to make sure that they are doing everything that they can at home to make sure that their child grows and develops into the successful, fullest potential of a human being that they can. So, yes, there are a lot of parents always that join who are intending to work with your child in the evenings or on weekends. That's totally fine.
And
Yeah.
it can also be a supplementary curriculum and a program.
Yes.
So I know that
Yes.
some of my parents in the school might send their children, 1 or 2 days a week, but they really want to have that supplementary program or curriculum or something that they can follow to continue that, the benefits of the Montessori education at home as well. So I find that
Yes.
that's also an avenue that people like to go down.
Yeah, and I think it's very beneficial, honestly. The more parents know about the Montessori method and the philosophy,
Yeah,
the more they're going to be able to support their child in the same way, just to
of course.
continue the schooling journey at home, and that just gives them, I mean, you're already educating your child at home. So whether
Yeah.
your child goes to a daycare during the day or they're with grandma, there are all kinds of parents who take this course, and some of the children go to a forest school a couple days a week and are with grandma another two or with a babysitter. We have parents who join the course to have them because they have a nanny come, and they want to make sure that the nanny can implement this method during the afternoons after they've picked up their child from preschool. So it's just really, really versatile. The activities that you would be doing with your child, I would say, if you're sending your child to a Montessori school, if you're planning on sending your child to a Montessori school, you would want to ask your child's teacher before purchasing any of the classic Montessori materials. I always tell parents that, like,
Yeah.
get a feel from your child's teacher about what they might want reduplicated at home or not. But I don't see any problem. And in fact, I only see benefits with using the Montessori philosophy at home if you are also sending your child to a school.
And I know Erica has a question. She said, "Is the course available in Spanish?" I'm not sure.
No.
No,
Yeah,
no,
it's
just
English. I speak English, but
okay.
that being said, we have tons of multilingual families enrolled in every single session of the course.
Yeah.
So what they do is they just they make materials. There's always chatting about it in our community about how different approaches to do it. So it's definitely something that we talk about, but we
Yeah.
don't provide materials that are in other languages. I speak English. And
Thanks,
I
Aubrey.
wish I spoke a lot of other
I'm
languages, but I
I'm
don't.
sure one in an ideal world, we would have it in so many
Ah,
different
I
languages.
know, I
And
know.
yes, Erica, it can be gifted. You can add it to, I know, Aubrey, you do have a function to gift it.
Mhm.
Yeah. So
Absolutely.
yeah, you would probably could they contact you through the website, Aubrey, to find out
Yeah,
about that?
we usually just handle it. So hello@childoftheredwoods.com We get you right to us. It's gifted off. I don't know. We just it is gifted from time to time. I'm not sure if there's a way that you do it through the website.
Okay.
You may end up just paying, and you would have let us know what the email address of the person is that you're gifting it to.
Amazing.
So, and we
Thank
just
you
handle
so
that.
much.
Yeah.
I'm mindful of time, Aubrey. I really appreciate the time that you've come, to tell us all about homeschooling and Montessori and what that looks like. I know that there are some comments here that people are really interested in doing the course. We've popped the links in there for you guys so that you can jump on this amazing bandwagon that's kicking off only in a few days' time. So good luck, Aubrey, with this next session of homeschooling parents. And I really appreciate everyone that's joined us today to know and to learn more about, how they can continue this Montessori journey at home. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed being here.
That's all right. All right, everyone, take care until our next live video. If there is anything else that you guys wanted to find out or know, you can pop the comments down below. We will definitely get our team to answer those for you. We'll also pop the link up on our YouTube channel. So once again, thank you so much for everyone for joining us. And until next time, take care.